Welcome to Betrayal Stories. In today's video, we share a story that reminds us how love, loss, and unexpected connections can change our lives forever. Michael sat quietly in his living room, the fading light of the evening stretching shadows across the walls. The air felt heavy, almost too still, like even the house knew something was missing. Just a few hours ago, his wife Claire had walked out. There were no harsh words, no slammed doors, no dramatic goodbye. She had simply packed her suitcase, zipped it up with quiet finality, and left. That sound, the soft hum of the zipper when was still echoing in his mind. It was strange how such a small sound could mark the end of something that once felt unbreakable. Michael had replayed her final words again and again, but they blurred together every time. All that remained clear in his memory was the sound of her footsteps fading down the driveway. That, and the silence that followed, a silence so deep it seemed to swallow everything around him. He looked around the room, at the framed photos lining the mantel. There they were, smiling faces frozen in happier times. Birthdays, vacations, small moments that once felt like forever. Michael picked up one of the pictures, his fingers tracing Claire's smiling face. He wondered when that smile had stopped being for him. There had been signs, of course. Dinners where she barely said a word. Nights when she came home late, claiming she had more work to finish. The way her eyes had begun to drift away from his whenever he spoke, like she was already somewhere else. But Michael had ignored all those moments, convincing himself that love, their love, would hold everything together. He had believed it was enough. Now the truth stood before him, quiet and undeniable. She was gone. He walked into the kitchen, hoping movement would help him think. But when his eyes landed on the counter, he froze. 2 coffee mugs sat there, untouched. He had made her a cup that morning, thinking maybe it would help ease whatever was weighing on her. She hadn't even touched it. He poured the coffee down the sink, watching the dark liquid swirl away. It felt symbolic somehow, like watching the last pieces of his marriage disappear down the drain. The sound of running water only made the silence heavier. Michael sat back on the couch, trying to breathe, trying to stop his thoughts from spinning out of control. He wanted to call someone, anyone, to hear a voice that could tell him this wasn't really the end, but he couldn't bring himself to reach for the phone. Who would he even call? Who could possibly understand what he was feeling when even he didn't? And then suddenly the doorbell rang. He froze. For a heartbeat, hope surged through him, the impossible kind. Maybe Claire had come back. Maybe she had changed her mind. But the moment passed quickly. Claire wasn't impulsive. She wouldn't return so soon. He stood slowly and opened the door. Standing there was Evelyn, Claire's mother. Her presence caught him completely off guard. She looked calm, dressed simply, holding a small bag in her hand. Her eyes, though, carried something deeper, a mix of worry and quiet strength. "Michael," she said softly, her voice gentle, familiar. "May I come in?" He hesitated only a moment before stepping aside. Evelyn had always been kind to him, but tonight he expected something different. Anger, blame, maybe even resentment. After all, her daughter had just walked out of their marriage. Yet there she was, standing in his doorway with compassion in her eyes. They sat together in the living room, the same space that had felt unbearably empty only moments earlier. Michael tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Finally, he managed a quiet, "She's gone." Evelyn looked at him with understanding that startled him. "I know," she said calmly. "She called me before she left." Michael's chest tightened. "Then you know she doesn't want this anymore." Evelyn's expression softened. "Sometimes people leave," she said slowly. "Not because they don't care, but because they don't know how to stay." Her words cut through the fog of confusion that had filled his mind. He had been ready for accusations, ready for anger, but not this, not empathy. He sank deeper into the couch, her words echoing in his head. For the first time that night, the silence in the room didn't feel like a punishment. Evelyn's presence filled the emptiness with something else. Understanding. She didn't pry for details or ask for explanations. She just sat there, quietly present, letting the stillness stretch between them. After a while, Michael finally spoke again. "I loved her," he said quietly. "I did everything I knew how to do. Maybe it wasn't enough." His voice cracked under the weight of those words. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "Don't say that," she said gently. "You gave her love, a home, stability. You were there for her. Sometimes people drift away not because we fail them, but because they lose their way." Michael looked at her, his eyes tired. "Then why does it feel like I've lost everything?" "Because you gave your heart," she replied softly. "And when you give that much, the emptiness that follows can feel unbearable. But Michael, don't let this pain make you believe you're not enough. You still are." Her voice carried warmth and quiet strength, and for the first time that night, he felt a small shift inside. Something loosening, something breaking open in a way that didn't hurt as much as it healed. The hours drifted by as Michael opened up. He talked about the distance that had slowly crept into his marriage, about the nights that felt endless, and the loneliness that had started to feel normal. Evelyn listened without interrupting, her eyes never judgmental. It felt strange to speak so freely, and even stranger to feel understood. At one point, he said with a sigh, "I don't know why I'm telling you all this. You're her mother. You should hate me." Evelyn shook her head softly. "Hate doesn't fix anything," she said. "And I don't hate you, Michael. I see your pain, and I know your heart." Something about her kindness felt like a lifeline. After weeks of tension and quiet misery, Michael felt seen. Later, Evelyn stood up and went into the kitchen. He watched as she moved gracefully, finding cups, boiling water, making tea, as though she had always belonged there. When she returned, she handed him a mug. The tea was warm, but it was her simple act of caring that melted something inside him. "Michael," she said after a moment, "I know this hurts more than anything, but don't let this hurt convince you that life is over. You still have so much ahead of you. You're stronger than you think." He nodded slowly, unable to find words. Watching her sit across from him, the flicker of the lamplight softening her face, he realized how calm she made him feel. It wasn't about replacing anyone or erasing what was lost. It was simply about not being alone in his pain. When she finally stood to leave, Michael walked her to the door. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for being here, for everything." Evelyn smiled gently. "You don't have to thank me. Sometimes being there for someone is the only thing we can do." After she left, Michael sat alone once more, but this time the silence didn't feel as crushing. It carried a faint warmth, the memory of her voice, her words, her kindness. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn visited occasionally. She would stop by with dinner, or to help tidy up, or just to sit with him for a while. At first, Michael thought she came out of obligation, but as time passed, he realized it was more than that. She came because she cared. Those visits became small moments of light in his otherwise gray days. Her voice in the hallway, the way she arranged flowers on the table, her laughter when he made an awkward joke. It all made the house feel alive again. She didn't try to fill the space Claire had left. She simply brought warmth back into a place that had grown cold. And without realizing it, Michael started to heal. He found himself smiling again, laughing at small things, remembering what it felt like to breathe without his chest tightening. One Friday evening, after a long day at work, he came home to find Evelyn waiting on the porch. She held a casserole dish in her hands and gave him a small smile. "I thought you might not have eaten yet," she said. He smiled faintly, his shoulders relaxing. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she replied, stepping inside. They ate together at the kitchen table, and the atmosphere was easy, simple. It felt like the home he had once known, only gentler now. They talked about ordinary things, laughed over small stories, and for the first time in a long while, the house felt warm again. Later, sitting in the living room by the soft glow of the fire, Evelyn said quietly, "I was worried about you. When Claire told me she was leaving, I thought you'd close yourself off completely, but you didn't." Michael gave a small laugh. "I didn't feel strong. But you've made it easier. I don't think I could have done this without you." Her eyes softened. "You're stronger than you think." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peaceful. A quiet understanding hung between them. They spent more evenings like that in the weeks that followed, sharing stories, remembering good times, sometimes sitting in silence that spoke louder than words. Evelyn's presence didn't erase the pain, but it reminded Michael that there was still goodness in the world, still kindness even after heartbreak. One evening, as she was about to leave, Michael said softly, "You've given me something I didn't think I'd find again. Peace." She smiled, her eyes reflecting warmth. "That's all I ever hoped for you, Michael.